Okay, so if you are just logging on, welcome to our cooking show tonight, Mighty Mamas United. If you are coming on here and you'd like to actually learn and practice with us, you can grab yourself a cutting board, maybe an onion, maybe an apple, maybe a zucchini, a knife. What else? A cocktail? I'm not condoning cutting and drinking, by the way, just so you know that. All right, so all right, so we will get started. So everybody, welcome to the show tonight. We are going to be discussing cooking essentials, especially when it comes to cutting, which means we will learn how to slice, dice, chop like a professional chef. Now, I'm not going to be the one to show you tonight. I actually have a special guest on tonight who is a very good friend of mine. And in addition, I'm going to tell you a little bit about him. Number one, he was my executive chef at Petite Robert Central. That's how we met. And by hands down, one of the most amazing people I've ever worked with and one of the most talented chefs. He even was a runner-up to being the chef at the White House, which is kind of a big deal. He's sort of like a Ron Burgundy, right? Eric, I'm calling you Ron Burgundy for tonight. But really, he is absolutely so talented. And tonight, he is going to go through knife essentials. So we'll talk about what types of knives there are, what they do, the names of them, and how we can use them. We'll even talk a little bit tonight about if you've got a child that's interested in cooking. You might be kind of scared to give them a knife. You may say to yourself, oh, I don't know if I want to give them this knife, because what if they chop their little fingers off? But he's even going to show us how you can get your children, when they're ready, of course, at the right age, to learn how to properly hold a knife so they can join in on the fun with you. So without further ado, Eric, it's so nice to have you. This is Chef Eric Bogardus with us, and he is going to show us tonight. Would you like to start off with knives and all the different types of knives? I mean, actually, you know what I'd like to know before we even get into that? What I'd love to know is how you got into cooking yourself and how many years you've been cooking now.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you, Danielle, for having me back. I know it's been a while since I've seen you in person, but Danielle and I go back many, many years, and we've been in the trenches together for many wars in the restaurant on some great nights and some fun events. So, obviously things have changed over the years and things have evolved, but one thing remains the same: is everybody loves food, everybody loves to cook, everybody wants to learn how to do it. So as Danielle was saying, I've been here for almost 30 years now. I have been cooking my entire life. I actually have a degree in anthropology, but I started out, this is going way, way back. The very first thing that I remember, one of my very first memories, is crawling out of a crib when I was a kid into the kitchen in the middle of the night. I crawled up, I got a chair, I pushed it up to the counter. I grabbed a carrot off the counter and I grabbed a knife and I tried to cut the carrot with a knife. And you probably can't see it on camera, but I still have the scar on my finger from cutting my finger off when I was a kid, trying to figure out how to cut a carrot. So that's always been something I'm into. It's always been a part of what I do. So cooking has just been there. So, essentials, how to hold a knife, that's always been the very most important thing that I think a lot of people have issues with. And one thing I always say is that, the greatest deficiency that most people have is their inefficiency. Because, and I say that because what takes the longest is the prep. If you're making a soup, what takes the longest part? It's the dicing, it's the cutting of the vegetables, it's all that part of the recipe that takes the longest. It's not the cooking part, that's the easy part. It's really all the prep that goes into it. So if you can really hone those skills and knife skills and understanding how quickly you can cut things, it'll save you a mass amount of time. And that's how restaurants become efficient, by talking about that. So, when you look at chef knives, there's a lot of different kinds of chef knives. And, it could be a deep, dark hole that you go into. It could be a real vise I think that people get caught up in when they look at knives. You could spend thousands and thousands of dollars on a knife, and at the end of the day, it's really that not that much different than a probably a $75 knife. So it becomes almost you want that sparkly thing, but it really doesn't help you at the end of the day. So I've gone down that road and I've spent thousands of dollars on knives, and today as I stand, those are all gone. Those knives are all gone. They disappeared over the years. So I have a collection of a lot of knives. If you look at knives, this is a traditional chef knife. If you can see it on this camera here, this is one of my favorite knives. This is a Japanese knife. It's a blend of steel. It's a traditional chef knife, but the only difference on this one is it's actually, and you're not going to be able to see it, but it's only beveled on one side. And what I mean by beveled is it's only honed on one side, and one side is completely flat. So this is actually a knife that's only for people who are left-handed.
Oh.
So you can get knives for right-handed or left-handed, but if you get a Japanese knife and you want it to be left-handed, it will cost you more because they do not believe in left-handed knives.
So you're left-handed, Eric?
So interesting fact.
Are you left-handed? I didn't know that.
I am left-handed.
You're left-handed. Oh, you're one of those people.
Yeah, I'm left-handed.
That's awesome. I didn't even know that. That's such an interesting thing about knives.
Yeah. So yeah, in Japan, they don't believe in being left-handed. So they charge you extra for a knife.
Wow. Unbelievable. That's
Just
very interesting.
A little tidbit. Yeah. So this is another kind of knife. This is sort of the Japanese version of a chef knife. It's called the Toko knife. So it really, I think Santoko really stands for what they call 3 virtues. So really what that is that's, the 3 types of things you can do with a knife: slicing, dicing, and chopping. It has, you'll see, a couple of little bevels in the side of it. And, if you're familiar with some knives, that's really what that does. That creates air when you're cutting. Cutting something, it doesn't stick to it. If you're cutting a tomato or cutting something that has a lot of moisture in it, a lot of times, like a potato, it will stick to your blade and you have to kind of try to peel it off. This is why the Japanese created these bevels in here, so that it pushes it right off the knife. It doesn't get stuck. It has that tilted blade on the edge, so you can get a more of a rocking motion when you're cutting it, very similar to a chef knife. So this is sort of the Japanese version of a chef knife. You get into things like this. So this is there are many versions of cleavers. This would be more of a meat style cleaver. It has a little bit of a thicker backbone to it. I don't know if you can see that. So there are many versions of this, and this is definitely one of those knives that you don't need to spend a lot of money on. You can get a really quality for under $20. It's just thick, heavy blade. It's made of a carbon steel, which will hold the blade, the fineness of the blade much longer. So it's one of those items that you don't need to spend a lot of money on. You'll see a lot of different versions of this. Sometimes they call them vegetable blades, different versions. Then you kind of get into the traditional bread knives. You see these everywhere. This is kind of a fancy bread knife. You don't really need to get a fancy bread knife, but believe it or not, I don't usually use these for bread. I use these more for tomatoes more than anything else. Typically, a lot of people don't tend to keep their knives very sharp at home. So these work really, really well with tomatoes and soft vegetables because it really just cuts right through. You don't have to worry about that skin in there. So I always try to use those. If you get into things like this. Yeah, so this is a boning knife. And you'll see, again, these are inexpensive because boning knives, really, you sharpen them so often that it's not really important to get an expensive knife. But the important thing is that it's a thin blade, so you have some flexibility in it. You can see how much it bends. That's really so you can get around those bones. If you're filleting a fish, you want to be able to slide it under the skin, and that blade is going to bend when you're doing that fish. So this is important when you get into things like this. Everybody's got a paring knife. There's versions of paring knives. This is a really tiny one. I use this all the time. It's just really kind of a utility style knife. It's one of those ones you have around all the time. And then you have what they call a tourné knife. So it's kind of like this. It's kind of like this knife, but it has that curve to it. And what that really is going to do is if you're doing anything that has a curve to it, whether it's an apple or a tomato or a lemon, whatever you're going to be doing, if you can do any fancy cuts, you want what they call a 20 knife. And you're going to hold that a little bit differently. So, and feel free to interrupt whenever you want, but probably the most important thing for me is how you hold a knife. It's really, really, it makes or breaks how to cut. Most people tend to hold their knife like this. They hold it down here because they feel like it's a handle, but that's not how you want to hold the blade. This is what they call the tang, which is this backbone here. And if you have a good quality knife, that tang will be the entire length of the knife. That will go all the way down through the handle. That's going to create a nice weight to the knife, and it's going to make it a little bit easier to hold. It's going to have durability. That's usually what you consider a forged knife. If you get something that's a cheap knife, and here's an example of a cheap knife. This is what they call a stamped blade, which means that from here, there's only a little piece of metal that sticks into the blade, and that's all there is. There's nothing else there. That is going to break eventually. It's very cheap. It's going to last you not very long, but it does the job. So, when you look at these knives like this, so getting into the holding part, I always think like this, and I'm left-handed, so I know this is not the greatest example, but I'm left-handed. You put it in your palm like this, you're going to be holding it so that it's halfway down. So I hold it like this, like your fingers over the top, one over the edge. So you have 3 fingers underneath and 1 on the top. So you're almost at the very top of the blade. And
Okay,
this is what they call the heel of the blade, part right heel. Yeah, this is the heel of the blade. And this is where you're going to put your 3rd finger bumped up against it. So after many, many years, you're going to get callus there. And I haven't been in the restaurant as much as I used to. So that callus has disappeared, but it used to have a big callus from all the years of chopping. And then you're going to put your finger on top, and you're going to put your thumb on the bottom. And what that does is that really gives you stability. That knife is not going to twist. It's not, if it gets wet or oily, you're never going to lose that blade. It's never going to spin in your hand so that you cut yourself. It's never going to disappear. And you could do whatever at that point.
Wow, what a difference.
Got it?
That's such a difference than like what we're all used to doing. Holy moly. That was like an eye opener right there.
So, it's one of those things. And I'll tell you, when I was a kid, the very first thing I did was, I had no idea how to hold the vegetable. And I'll show an example on a carrot. When I did, I was holding it like this, with my fingers out. That you feel like you're holding it with some stability, right? So you're cutting like this, and you got your fingers sticking out, and you're doing, that's how most people cut. They cut like that. They're holding it. That's exactly not how you do it. You got to think of it as a claw. You just think of it as a claw. And this is a great example. And Danielle had mentioned this. I bought this for my daughter for Christmas, and this was something I thought was really kind of, I wanted her to learn the proper way to hold a knife. So what this is from a French company called they call Opinel. It's called Le Petit Chef. So really what it is this is a little finger guard, and it's got 2 places for your finger on the back. And you're going to put your fingers in here, and it becomes basically teaches you to create that claw. And then this knife has that hole exactly where you should be holding that knife.
That is so awesome. I can't even tell you, like, this is such a game changer for my kitchen, because the other day my son wanted to help. I was like, I just don't trust you with the knife, like, yet, but at the same time, I know he's old enough to try. So this is such a great idea, even just for beginners, like for those that just want to get used to that, like you said, like the claw. I think by saying the word claw too, it just helps you do it by saying that word, like make a claw. Like that's huge. And it already feels so different. Like I feel like I have so much control over the food too. Like this isn't going anywhere.
No, it's not going anywhere. And it's one of those things. A lot of times what you'll see in restaurants is you'll see chefs who they don't. I learned quickly not to cut my fingernails short, because one of the things I used when I was cooking was you use your fingernails to hold the product, the carrot. I'm using my fingers to hold it. And you want to have a little bit of fingernail. You don't want to cut those too thin, because you lose that ability to kind of rip that product. So,
And it's funny you said that because
for your
I could
kids
feel
at
my
home
fingernails
using
in there.
this,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, that's exactly what you want. So,
Hmm.
with this little guard like this, my daughter can basically use this, learn to kind of push down, and you learn to use that guide to kind of to hold it like this. So if I was using a traditional knife, and I'll show you, what I do is I basically will make that claw, and I rest that blade against my knuckles, and I never lift past my knuckles. If you lose that ability to guide your knife. So what happens is you raise it up. If you go too far, then you're going to go over your finger and you're going to come down on the top of your finger. If you go up only halfway in your knuckle and then down, and you have that claw, you will never cut yourself. You could literally, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've sat there and cut carrots and cut vegetables while I was talking to somebody. And I can sit there for 10 minutes and cut onions and cut carrots and cut cucumbers and never look down on my fingers, because I never let loose of the carrot, and I always knew where my fingers were because I felt the blade against my hand.
I'm practicing
So
that
it's
right now. I'm
really
looking at
techniques
you
that
and
once you kind
chopping.
of get used to it, it's
Yeah, do you see me? I'm like, uh-huh, uh-huh.
it really works. It's kind of one of those fun things. It's like you think about it, but it seems cool. And there's a lot of things that just don't feel natural, but this will become very natural once you do it.
Yeah,
And
at
once
first
you
it
get
does feel a
used
little,
to
it
it,
does feel a
it's
little
pretty
awkward at
much one of the
first.
easiest things to do.
Yeah, I gotta admit, it does feel like at first it feels
Yeah.
like a little awkward. Like you're like, am I like this feels even different being up here because you're like holding it down so
Yep.
low. Yeah, no, for sure. But you know what? But like,
Yep.
look at how nice that my zucchinis came.
And
They
I know they're perfect.
actually
And
came out really
and it
good. I
feels,
feel like
you
I have so
feel
much more
nervous
control.
because you yeah, you feel nervous because you feel that blade touching your hand.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
really, that's a guide. You're not once you feel that blade, you know where it is. You're never going to you're never going to lose it ever. And that's going to make all the difference in the world, because I can't, when people chop, they tend to use the tip of their knife and they go like this, and you hear that noise.
Mhm.
They're pressing down on that knife and making that noise. That's not what you want. You want, basically, you're going to use the back part of that knife. You really only use this part of the knife when you're cutting. This is really only used for herbs. Back is really what you're using for them. So when you're holding it, you're pressing down and forward so that you're getting a slicing motion. If you talk about herbs, and I don't know, Danielle, you probably
I'm
don't
gonna
have any
grab
basil,
some
but
mint.
you.
I've got mint. I'm gonna grab mint.
And this is something that, okay. All right. So when you guys are looking at basil or anything at all, any kind of herb, they bruise easily. So what you want is you want to avoid as much friction as possible on the herb, because what that does is that bruises it, becomes black very fast. So the idea is to really think about what's the least amount of resistance when you're cutting. It's not chopping, it's not pushing straight down. It's pulling
Oh,
through the knife. That's what you want. You want to pull through. So if you get basil, and again, this is something, and every chef kind of learns first, is you take the leaves, you're going to fold them, you're going to put them inside each other, create a little cup, and then you're going to roll those basil leaves up. You can do this with anything, just like Danielle's using mint, do with mint as well. So you almost have like a little cigar at that point. All your herbs are there, all rolled up nice and tight. You can, if you want to be careful, what you do is you hold the same way with the claw. And then you're going to take that knife, you're going to put the tip down on your cutting board, and you're going to pull towards yourself. You're not going to lower the blade, and I'll turn like this so you can kind of see a little bit.
oh,
Lower the blade. You're not going to go like this and chop, because
oh,
you make that crunchy noise when you're doing it. What you want to do is you want to pull towards you,
oh, wow,
and
what
you're
a
never ever
difference.
moving the blade. You're just moving the tip. It really just pulls through, and it creates a beautiful slice. And this will stay nice and green 10 times longer than it would normally if you were to cut it any other way.
Oh my gosh, this is like,
That's just the best way to do it. And you could do the same thing.
This is amazing. I've never seen my herbs cut this amazing. Look at this. I just have to show, because this is all, that looks so, it looks so pretty and so ribboned.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh, I love it. This is like
that's
life-changing.
best way to do it.
So excited. Oh, the little things.
So, you know, you do the same thing with chives.
It's,
Chi-
yeah, this is great.
chives, you do the same thing. You pull through, and it's really going like this. You're never pushing down. You're never pushing forward. You will with chopping. You're pulling back, and it feels a little unnatural at first. But if you're looking to do these in advance, and you want to have a fun, you're doing a garnish for your plates, and you want to do these all in advance, it's much easier to do this because they're going to stay nice and green and beautiful like that. And here's another tip: everybody does this. I used to do it, and I probably still do it. You take your knife and you go like this, and you pick everything up and you move it off your cutting board. That's the quickest way to dull your knife. I would ask everybody get one of these. This is just a bench scraper. It's really not an expensive item, and it's useful. You take it, and I know you have one, Danielle.
I do have one. I actually do.
And this
It's
is
got a
how you
white
pick
hand.
up
I don't
everything
know
on
where,
your cutting board.
where it is at the moment, but I do definitely have one of those. My mom's always talking about having that everywhere. She's obsessed with it. She's like, oh, and then you have to get the. I know. I also, you know, I also saw a trick to, how do you feel about taking the back, like the back of the knife and coming up and not the sharp edge? Do you ever do that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do that. Yeah, I can definitely do the back of the knife. But again, it depends on the type of knife you have. If it's a thin blade and it bends very easily, you're still going to damage the tip, but definitely the knife is an option as well. You know, if you're doing crazy things like smashing garlic and stuff like that, then, you know, it's a whole different ball game. But,
right.
you know, so those are some basic things that I think about. That's the very first thing I notice people do when they're learning to cut is the easy handling a knife and how that really changes everything they do. And it's one of those things really, it's going to take you longer the first couple of times you do it, but I get used to it. You know, I can, you know, it takes me seconds to cut 10 pounds of vegetables, you know, whereas, you know, might take somebody who's not really used to it, might take them half a night just to sit there and dice stuff. And then when you talk about an onion, that's the last thing you want to do is sit there all along cutting the onion. You want to do the onion as fast as possible.
Oh yeah, because
right?
I'm always crying.
And
when I cut
nobody
onions.
wants to cry when they're doing onions.
Oh, always. And there's all these funny things. Do you ever hear about all the funny things like breathe out of your mouth? There was another one that was like stick something in your mouth, breathe out of your mouth,
Yeah.
freeze the onion. There's like all these different things that people tell you to do. I'm like, I just need to know how to cut that thing fast and efficient and get in and get out with the onion.
Yep.
But you can give us your tricks.
One thing you can do is, and you see this a lot in Indian cuisine, is you soak, once you have that onion opened up, you can soak it in ice water. And they typically do that when they're making their onion chutney. They will soak the onions, and that really takes out that gas that makes you kind of cry, and it takes that bitterness out of the onion, and it makes a difference. So you can do that as well. That's an easy kind of thing to do. So onions, and I think there's a lot of debate on how to cut an onion. I think everybody has their own version of it. You know, I can tell you, after making enough onion soups at Petit Robert, you know, we would do 50-pound bags of onions, peeling and cutting on a daily basis. You got pretty fast.
This is the one thing I'm really excited about.
So, you know, I'm so, you know, one of the things that you know, I think about when I think of onions is that one of the cardinal rules of cutting with a knife is never to cut towards yourself. It's always been to cut away. It's never been to slice this way so that you get that knife cutting towards your body or towards your hand. But it kind of goes out the window a little bit when you're talking about an onion. Really what you want to do, and this is how I do it. And again, like I said, everybody has their own bait on this. I cut the ends off because I'm looking for speed. I cut both ends off because I know I don't need them. there's still a little bit of cap on the end. You're not going to cut all the way through it, but you're going to cut 40 of it. And then what I do is I take basically, I just tap the knife to the top and I rock the knife back so that I'm basically cutting just the outer skin on it. So then now I know basically I'm just peeling that outer peel off on the onion. I'm not losing anything, but I'm getting it all off. And here's something that a lot of people don't know. If you see inside of this onion, there's almost this layer of a waxy part of the onion that's connected to the peel. And it's kind of hard to see, but there's a little, it's almost like a piece of skin peeling off, like if a snake shed its skin.
Yeah,
this,
I see
this
it.
little piece right here.
Yeah.
This is what, if you don't take this and you're making an onion ring, this will cause all of your batter to fall off your onion ring. So a lot of times what you don't see is you get, if you're buying onion ring or a frozen product or whatever, that's an extra step in the process. And that what happens is that constitutes money to take that extra piece off. But if you take that off, it's going to make all the difference in the world if you're making an onion ring. So now you have a new onion peeled. I cut it directly in half lengthwise. So from the top to the bottom, all the way through, not sideways. So now you have your onion, you have your top, you can still see a little piece here that's kind of attached. It's keeping it all together, but it's still there. So now your onion layers are going this way, you know, like half moon shapes all the way through. So what I do is I lay it flat, and this is where the part is in that takes a little getting used to because it feels unnatural because you're almost be cutting towards yourself a little bit. You're cutting towards your hand, but what you do is you put your hand flat, keep your fingers completely up, like as far up as you could possibly keep them, like you're putting towards the sky. Get to the edge of your cutting board, and you're going to start keeping your knife level to the cutting board, and you're going to cut straight back all the way to the very end. So you can see I'm not all the way through, but I'm almost to the end. And you're going to do that a couple of times. You're going to do up one more, and you're going to do one more. So typically usually 3 times. So you've done 3 layers all the way through.
I'm copying you.
And you want to make sure your fingers are pointed up.
I'm like,
so now
I got my
you
fingers
have that.
still, so I'm good.
So once you have, yeah, good. That's good. So now you have that. You have your 3 slices through. Now you're going to take your knife and you're going to point it towards the tip of the onion, the top where it was connected, and you're going to start to go. Basically, you're going to go as a half moon, and you're going to go up, and you're going to follow the direction of the onion. You're going to follow the curve of the onion. You're going to cut straight down. You're going to curve. So if it starts here on a curve, you're going to cut on the curve and cut all the way through. But you're going to go like that, and you're going to keep going, and about 1/8 of an inch all the way through. But you're not going to cut all the way to the tip. You're not going to cut part of the way.
Oh, okay. Oops, I went all the way down. See? Did you cut all the way through or just halfway? See, I'm already messing up.
Nope, not all the way through. Just all the way to the tip, but
got it. So some of mine I cut.
So you want to make sure it's still intact, basically.
All right, well, I'll just cut it like that.
So now what you're going to do is turn it sideways, because now you have basically some horizontal cuts, you have some vertical cuts, and you have the natural onion layers. So you have 3 cuts basically in the onion already. Now you're going for a 4th cut. Now you're going to go straight down all the way through, as tight as you can get it.
Oh yeah, that looks great.
And once you get to that heel, typically you can keep that heel, you can dice it depending on what you're doing with it. But that heel kind of tends to be kind of hard and not great. But now what you have is like this beautiful diced, it's It's all really nice small dices.
Yeah, this looks awesome.
Much,
Wow.
much easier. So you're slicing it, you're not chopping it.
Mm.
And that's going to make a
I
huge
only teared a
difference
little
about
bit.
how many gases.
Yeah, exactly. I don't feel like I really teared. Like I'm normally crying my eyes out. My son's like, "What's wrong?" I'm like, nothing. I had a bad day. I had a plate. That was awesome. I feel like onions is one of the things that is like everyone has a hard time cutting onions. Everybody. And I need to like find my little gadget that you've got over there. But that was so nice to be able to-
100%, 100%.
Yeah.
So when you think about, all the different cuts, you think about dicing, brunoise, which is a fancy word for a small dice. If you're making a nice soup and you want to do a lentil soup and you want to have some nice diced vegetables, what you want to do is you're looking to square off those options. So, if you look at a carrot's a good option for that. You're going to take your peeler, and I think, to me, this is one of my pet peeves. I look at peelers as something that, a lot of people, I don't know. I'm not a big fan of certain peelers. There's the ones with big handles where people go like this, and they're kind of going crazy with them. I tend to do a more natural, and I almost hold it a little bit differently. I hold it like this, complete reverse of what most people would hold it.
Right. Most people would be like, they'd hold it
I'm
like
actually
this,
going
right?
away from myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, you would hold it like, like you're gonna stab somebody.
That's
So
an easy way to remember it. Now that you said that, I will forget.
Don't shank anybody.
Yes.
So when I do a peeler, and this is one of those things, this peeler called Swiss Mark out of Switzerland. These are super cheap. They're only a couple, like $1.50 for these peelers. And I get these in packs of 3, and I'll have them for 10 years. These peelers last forever, and they're just plastic, but they have great blades, and they're exactly what you need for a peeler. And basically, when I'm looking at a peeler, I'm looking like this. I'm looking at a carrot, and I'm gonna peel away from me like that. And I'm just gonna pull it away, and then it's gonna be much easier to kind of get full length and be done. So that's a full carrot. And believe me, that's another one of those things you can do different ways. I tend to do it away from me, but if I'm doing a potato, I do it the opposite. If I'm doing a potato, I hold the potato this way and I pull towards me.
So you do the potato this way, but then you do it this way otherwise.
Yeah. Yep. But you want to hold your peeler this way if you're going away.
Got it.
Like this.
Like this. Like that.
Yeah. If you're doing it towards you, like a potato, and the only reason I do it towards me with a potato, I'm holding it in my palm like this, and the potato's curved. So I'm starting from the top and I'm pulling the blade around.
Got it.
As a curve.
Mm-hmm.
And it's much, much easier to do that way with potato.
Well, this is
There's
very
a million gadgets
very
out there,
insightful. Very insightful.
So dicing.
Dicing, yeah.
So when I think about dicing, I think about carrots are probably the most difficult to do because they can be very hard. They can slip around on the cutting boards a lot. So one of the easiest things you can do is if you take a chunk of it, right? If you want carrots, you can stand them up this way, and you can actually go straight down on them because they tend to have, the fiber tends to go vertically. So what happens is that your knife will naturally stay perfectly straight when you cut into the carrot way. If you try to cut the carrot when it's on the board and it's rounded, what happens is at times it will slip, it'll keep slipping on you, it'll be difficult to roll. So whereas you get that first cut that's vertical and it pulls off, then you have a flat piece of the carrot. Now you can square that carrot off. And again, really just squaring it. So now you have a perfect square, or rectangle, I should say, not a square. So you could do different cuts from this. You could do baton cuts. You could do basically, you can cut this in 4. And these are what they would call baton cuts. And you'd have 4 of these. If you wanted to do a nice dice, you could just basically take these 4, line them all up. And again, the claw, using your two outer fingers, your thumb and your pinky, and those are what hold the carrot together. Use your knife to line them up. And then you're gonna make that claw and you're gonna cut squares. And you're gonna just roll back on it. And you're gonna get these nice, beautiful ice.
Yeah, it's like perfect cubes. You always see these perfect cubes and soups, and you're like, how do they do that? Why does it look so perfect? Now we know how.
So I had a chef at one point who, in order to teach me how to dice, basically made me dice a 50-pound bag of carrots like this.
Ah.
And then he took those and he dumped them into a soup bane and made it into a puree.
Oh, no. Oh my God. No, that's horrible. It's so funny. Oh my goodness.
You would never see that now because that would be a complete waste of labor. But that was definitely the way it was back then, just to sort of do those cuts. So the other thing you can do when you're doing a turn brunoise is you're going to take that again. You're going to dice that one piece again and just dice that into 4. So now you have 4 little tiny sticks full.
And then you have for anything too, like
what they call a brunoise.
If I'm cutting a zucchini, it's the same. Those zucchini's kind of round like a carrot. So the same thing would go for the zucchini.
Yep.
You do the same thing. So you start it up here.
Absolutely.
And cut down.
Yep. So I would even cut that zucchini in half, and then that way you don't have that.
Right. Yeah. I knew I missed something. I'm like, wait a minute. There we go. Yeah, you're right. And then in half again.
Yeah. So those are really some simple, easy cuts. And if you think about some other options, some things you can do, and zucchini works really well for this. If you're looking to do something along the lines of like a julienne cut. So, everybody has, the first thing they think about when they think about slicers or what they call mandolins is the French style mandolins, which are the big, super expensive metal ones that cost $200-300. You can get something like this, which is what they call a Japanese mandolin, which is almost identical, but these cost like $30, and they do the same thing. They do come with a guard to protect your fingers, which I would certainly recommend if you've never used one of these before, because you can get a pretty nasty cut with these. And Danielle, you've ever had one, but they are not fun cuts.
See what I got that's similar over here. Yours is nicer than mine. Mine are kind of not as thick as yours, but.
So really, it's just about, this is looking for a julienne cut. I'm going to push that through just to get kind of that quick blade cut. What you end up with is some nice slices of carrots.
Oh, those look so pretty.
And then you can take these, you square them off if you want. Yeah, you could square them off and do a nice julienne cut if you wanted to. You can even do them thinner if you want. You can do them like really whisper thin. But once you have them, again, it's all about the claw, keeping your blade on the cutting board, never lifting your blade off the board. You just want to constantly blade against your fingers, and you're never lifting it off, and you're never moving your finger. And then you end up with this nice little cut, and you've never touched anything.
Oh, it looks so awesome.
Simple things like that.
I know, and it's so impressive too when you you cook dinner and you people see things sliced in their dish differently than they're used to. Like they're always so impressed by just this. It's like the smallest little changes make such a big deal, especially when you're plating.
Oh yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, that makes all the difference. I mean, presentation is 90%.
Oh,
You know,
absolutely.
it,
Yeah.
obviously the taste is important, but yeah, but presentation is really important. So, apples, the same thing. Apples are really great on these because they have so much water content in them. They work really well for this. They're much easier to use on these mandolins. So, apples are really good for this because you can really go quick and create these beautiful thin slices of apple. And apples, because they have that nice moisture to them, stick. So it makes it very easy to do a nice slice with these.
Ooh, you could even make little apple chips in the oven, right? You ever done that before?
Oh yeah,
Yeah. Put a little
yeah.
cinnamon on them.
Oh yeah.
So good.
Oh
How
sure.
cute are these for your kids? Like I feel like kids really love thin apples too. Like they love little slices, thin slices of things. At least my son does. I do too. But um,
Oh
so
yeah.
so
My daughter
nice.
likes anything you can make into a face.
Yeah, exactly. I know, so cute. Anything you can do that's creative for the kids, right? The same with them. It's all about presentation.
That's
I
right.
think they're even worse than adults when it comes to presentation.
Oh yeah, 100%. I make my daughter breakfast, and 90% of the time, if it's not in the shape of a face, she doesn't like it.
See, now you started off that way. Now you have to stay that way. You have to live up. Your expectation now is this high. That's kind of like that was like me when with both my kids. Everyone just say, "Oh, you don't warm his bottle?" And I was like, "No, if I warm the bottle, what's going to happen when I'm out?" And he wants a warm bottle. I'm not going to have one. So I did everything room temp. Everything's room temp. Both my kids never had a warm bottle, but they never knew the difference and they never asked.
Oh yeah.
Well, or cried for it, I should say. So,
Yeah, I know our kids. Our kids are basically the same age. So, or your son is the same age, and my dog gotten into a routine nighttime tea. She has a little pack that she likes to get warmed up to put on her stomach, and she has her shades to wear when she sleeps to
stop.
keep the sun out of her eyes.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. You are so funny. They do though. They like to do my son does this thing every night where he calls it his thing. And it's the way he burrows underneath his covers. And he used to grab his Nemo stuffed animal. And every day he goes, wait, I have to do my thing. I was like, okay, do your thing. And he does this thing where he burrows underneath and like gets the covers up to his face, but he calls it his thing. And it's just so cute because it's like on routine every single night, the thing. We don't know what the thing really is, just this thing. He says, I got to do my thing. So funny, so cute. But this is so awesome. This is amazing. I think that, you know what else it's funny? I think I know we don't have a piece of meat tonight, but I feel like a lot of people are always saying they get really confused when you say, "Oh, cut against the grain." Like, everyone's like, "What does that even mean?" And it's really which way if you can kind of give us like a visual with meat, with cutting against the grain versus,
Yeah,
I think that would be great because I feel like
sure.
everyone's always like, "I'm so confused by that," and I don't even think they understand what that means. So it'd be kind of cool if you could tell us that too. I think that's another thing with slicing meats that and like why and
Yeah,
tell us why we have to cut it a certain way, like what difference is it really making? Just curious.
sure. So let me think here. Let me think. So if I do an example using this, I'll use this cucumber. So you get a slice of cucumber, and you have, let's just say this is the carrots on top. This is kind of a crude example, but you get the idea. This is a zero, what they call a 0 by 1. A 0 by 1 is really how the fat is trimmed on a sirloin steak, a sirloin strip steak. So you cut that steak into a New York strip. And then you get, let's say that's your New York strip on your cutting board, like this, right? So that's your would be your tail, your tip. You're gonna get that stick. If that's the way it's facing you, if you look at it, the grains are gonna be going the length of the meat. They're gonna be going this way. So the fibers, if you look at cuts of meat like what they call chuck flap, which here in New England is the most popular cut because any restaurant who has steak tips, they're using what they call sirloin flat meat, which tends to have the fibers of the meat are very big. So what that means is that if you look at how close they are together, the meat you can actually pull the fibers apart.
I know
so you
what
can
you
see
mean.
it on the New York strip. It's a little bit tighter. Yeah. So the fibers are going this way. So in order to cut that against that grain, if you cut with the fiber, it's almost like, and this is probably a terrible example, but if you're cutting a piece of wood and you're trying to cut a tree, you're not going to cut it vertically. You're going to cut it this way when you cut it down.
Right.
Because what's going to happen, it's the least amount of friction going this way. If you're cutting it this way, you're going with the grain, it's causing a lot of friction. It causes tension in the fibers and it makes it tough.
Yeah.
So if you're cutting the meat and you're going to go this way, if you're going to cut it, you're going to cut it this way against the grain. So it's causing that fiber to become loose and very open, and it becomes very moist, and like it loosens it up a little bit. So it becomes very tender, which is why you see a lot of things like flank steak. Flank steak needs to be cut against the grain. It needs to become very thin. If you don't do that, it becomes very chewy and it's like shoe leather.
Yes.
So you can take a piece of meat like that and it can be melted or melt tender, or it can be tough as a shoe if you do it the wrong way.
It's so true.
That's probably the most important thing. Yeah, it's the most important thing.
Like
Probably
skirt steak too. That's another one that can be pretty tough if it's not done right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Now I'm craving steak. Now I want steak. Get hungry. You already had dinner too. I need to calm down.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So
I deal with that a lot.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I'm gonna have a drink.
You know what? Let's both have a cocktail. Well, I think this is so exciting and so interesting. I hope that everyone on here has gotten some really good value from this. I hope you had a glass of wine while you were watching us. These are all just some basic things that I think that a lot of us, if we could even just learning how to hold that knife correctly is a big thing. And I love the fact that you were talking about, you hear people and they're doing that sound, and like there's some of you on here that probably we're watching and we're like, oh my God, I'm totally doing that. But these are just all the such small little tweaks in your cooking that make such a big difference that will, I think like you said, it is a little uncomfortable first to hold the knife correctly and to keep that claw. Like I'm going to keep practicing that claw. It doesn't come supernatural. Like you just gotta, how long did it take you when you first started like cooking to really feel like that felt? Now I know, well, granted you were in a kitchen with like hundreds of pounds of vegetables for hours practicing, but how long, when you first started your career, did it take you to get used to, like second nature to having it? Because it does feel, you do almost feel like you're going to cut this part of your hand almost, right? When you first start, you're like, am I going to slice my finger? It's a little like freaky. So how long did it take you to get comfortable?
Yeah, it definitely took me a couple of years. I mean, I think growing up, it was just more necessity of having a knife and just cutting. I wasn't thinking about it, but as I got into restaurants and I started to see other people doing it, I started to realize, how much faster I could do it if I was doing it the right way.
Yeah.
So I forced myself to really slow down and work on technique and not think about it. And then as I got used to that, I started to speed up and go faster and faster, and it became more natural. Because if you really, it makes a huge difference if you spend a little bit of time doing the basics of the law, never lifting your knife off the cutting board, never going like this, always keeping it tight against your fingers. And those are the couple of basic things that's going to make all the difference.
Yeah, I saw some questions popping up. So we got a bunch of comments here, and I'm gonna kind of go down. That's first of all, thank you for sharing all your amazing tips with us. I'm going to peek over here and see what some people are asking. I saw that, let's see, Debbie was saying that when she wears contact lenses with the onion, it doesn't bother her eyes. Well, that's pretty cool. Hey, Eric, do you think that when you wear your glasses, it helps with your onion tearing? I'm curious if glasses help.
Definitely
No?
not.
Well, Debbie
No,
says, yeah, Debbie says it does, which is pretty cool. Let's see. Oh, Alina had asked what brand is the peeler that you had said before. What was the name of it?
it's called Swiss Mar.
Swiss Mar. All right, I'll have to like
So,
M-A-R.
yep.
Okay,
Yeah,
Swiss Mar. I know, I'm
M-A-R.
gonna go
Yep,
buy that too.
Swiss M-A-R.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna have to go buy one of those as well. All right, and then let's see what else. Can see his board. My mom wants to see your board. Oh, she's jealous. She wants to know what kind of chopping board you have. Actually, do you have a preference between a wood cutting board and a plastic cutting board? Or like, what's your philosophy on A, what is the cutting board you have brand? My mom wants to know. And then B, why do you have a preference over wood versus plastic? And tell us how you feel about cutting boards.
So I used to really like wood cutting boards, just because that was, it was always stuck in everyone's head. Wood cutting board was the way to go. So if you have a wooden board, I think they're great, but they take a lot of maintenance. You got to really take care of them, but they're also very porous. So if you don't take care of them, you don't do the right thing, and you're cutting some wrong, doing some things like that, it can be an issue. Plastic boards, obviously, in restaurants, that's the typical board most people use because it's the most sanitary, and they're cheap and they're replaceable. But what I don't like about them is they're not great for the home use. I'm not a big fan of them. They don't feel natural. I don't feel like I have the same grip with the knife that I do on other boards. But what I really like now is bamboo boards. I find bamboo boards for me are a little bit better because they have that mix of still feeling like wood. They're a little bit porous. They're a little bit soft, so my knife still sticks to the board. I can still dig into it, but it still has that plastic texture to it in the sense that it's tight. It's not as porous, so it's easier to keep maintenance on. And you still do the mineral oil just like you would on a wood cutting board, but they're going to have a lot more durability than the traditional cutting board. So for me, bamboo boards, and this is a bamboo board.
Okay, that's good to know.
And the
Bamboo.
brand is called like Soul.
Yeah, awesome. I love that. That's so great. Okay, so bamboo, we got that. So let's see. Someone asked, what am I going to do with my, Alina says, what am I going to do with my zucchini, onion, and mint? I'm not too sure just yet. I will probably, well, the mint I'm going to use for my salad for sure. Definitely going to use my mint. The apples we will eat tomorrow at breakfast time for my son. If they don't probably be brown by then, but that's okay. I don't know. I'm going to cook my zucchini and do something with it. I haven't figured it out.
Oh, that's a great raw salad.
Oh, I
Take
always
the
put mint in my
zucchini, put a
salad.
little lemon juice with some apple and your mint.
Actually, yeah, that would be
Yeah,
good.
mix those together. That's a perfect
Yeah.
salad.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Oh, looks like Alina already bought she found it and bought it. I'm assuming she got the peeler already. She already bought it. And my mom said she has bamboo.
Oh,
And share the recipe after. Okay, we will. So guys, I know there's a bunch of you still on here. Does any of you have questions for Chef Eric? I will, you can pop a question below. We can answer any other questions that you think you guys have. I hope you guys could see the chopping. I know on our screen, we can see Eric's board. I can't tell if in the group you guys could see his board. Hopefully you could. But do you guys have any questions? Anyone else have any questions with cutting, knives, brands, anything you can think of? You've got another minute or so. Oh, we've been on here for about an hour, so we are going to be wrapping it up. Does anyone else have any other questions?
Oh, wow.
I know we've been an hour. Well, wow, it's been an hour. Holy moly. See how interesting and fun cutting can be? I want to take I want to go to culinary school now, right now. Oh, how to sharpen. Okay, Valerie. Valerie has a question. She wants to know, my mom says, great job. Alina says, Great class, thank you. And Valerie had a question. She said, how do you sharpen your knives? I know how I sharpen mine, but I'd like to know how you sharpen yours. Do you have like an actual machine at home, or do you have a handheld sharpener? What do you use?
So I have two stones. They're different grades. They're both sandstones, so you soak them in water, and then you do traditional blades where you kind of you would go vertically on the stones to sharpen them. And obviously, you have the steel, which is not sharpening; it's really just taking what they call the tines on the blades. So they're like little crazy hairs, like bedhead in the morning, and they're sticking all over the place. And all this does is really it just kind of straightens those hairs out so that it defines your knife. It doesn't sharpen it, but it really makes it feel like it's sharp, and that will last you for an hour if you're using it really hot. So, and it really depends also on the metal itself. There are certain blades that will hold a sharpness a lot longer. Blades like this, which is a kind of a traditional carbon steel. These are very metal. They will hold a sharp edge much longer, but they will also, they're very porous, so they will rust very quickly if you don't take care of them. So a lot of times you'll see is they make blades that are cheaper, they're a lesser quality metal. They'll be sharp, but they'll get dull very fast. So you want to make sure it has that sort of carbon steel mixed into it.
Awesome question. Great question. Does anyone else have any other questions tonight? So hopefully, Valerie, that was helpful. Guys, so we're about to, I hope you guys liked it. We're getting some thumbs up here. We're getting some clapping. Yay! I know Monique just hopped on. Guys, if you're just hopping on, this has been recorded. It's going to be uploaded to my my YouTube channel. Okay, so YouTube channel is just my name. It's under as Danielle Formaro. It'll be uploaded by tomorrow. And in this live group, on our screen, we've got 3 shots. We've got a cutting board. We've got and myself and Eric here. So in the YouTube version, you'll actually really see a super close cut up, super close view of him cutting the vegetables too. If you weren't able to see it tonight, it's hard to tell in the group right now what you guys are seeing versus what we're seeing. But either way, if you can watch this again, because I know I'm probably going to watch this whole thing again and practice like I did tonight. So you can watch this over and over again. And yay, thank you, Alina. Got some claps. So guys, feel free to keep, if you want to keep commenting any questions below. Eric is now in this group. He's a mighty mama now. So he can always respond and comment back to you. Eric, thank you so much for doing this with us tonight. This was so much fun. I seriously want to go to culinary school. I always wanted to. I feel like I need to go back and redo my college years. Just an excuse to go back to college. But thank you so much for being with us. It's so nice to see you. And let's cheers one more time tonight together to making me
Cheers.
like a professional chef.
Cheers. Thank you, guys.
Cheers. And thank you so much. And we'll have you back hopefully soon for another awesome educational fun event. Thank you, Chef Eric. Thanks,
Thank you.
guys, for tuning in. Have an awesome night.